All right, let's get right into it. In the massive global chess match between superpowers, some moves don't just capture a piece, they flip the entire board over. We're about to break down one of those moments, a critical juncture in the tech war between the United States and China. It all boils down to this one date, October 26, 2025. The source material we're digging into here calls this the inflection point, the precise moment America started turning a massive vulnerability into a real strategic advantage in the race for AI, for clean energy, and for military superiority. So, what exactly was this vulnerability? Well, it all comes down to a group of 17 obscure metals you've probably never even heard of, but I guarantee you use them every single day. They're called rare earth elements, and they somehow became the absolute linchpin in this global power struggle. Let's dig into why. To really get what happened next, you first have to understand the problem. And honestly, it was a big one. The United States was in a position of almost unbelievable dependence on its main strategic rival for the very building blocks of modern technology. Right, so these are rare earth elements, or REEs. Now, the name's kind of misleading. They're not actually all that rare in the Earth's crust, but processing them, that's the hard part. It's incredibly difficult and environmentally messy. Think of them like the vitamins of the modern world. You only need a tiny amount, but without them, almost nothing high-tech actually works. They are literally the silicon soul that makes the powerful magnets and components inside everything from your smartphone to our most advanced weapons possible. And this chart, wow, this shows you the sheer scale of the imbalance. And here's the absolute key. It's not about who has the raw ore in the ground. It's all about who can process it. For decades, China was willing to do the dirty, expensive work, and frankly, the rest of the world was happy to let them. And the result? This. A staggering 90% of the world's rare earths are processed there. That isn't just a market share, it's a strategic weapon. And this isn't some abstract economic problem we're talking about. This slide lays out the real-world stakes perfectly. We're talking about the permanent magnets in the F-35 fighter jet, the guidance systems in Tomahawk missiles, the guts of every electric vehicle, and even the components that power the AI data centers that are literally building our future. Let's just put a hard number on it. 78%. According to the source, that's the percentage of all U.S. weapon systems that rely on materials sourced from China. Just let that sink in for a second. In any potential conflict, your main strategic rival holds the off switch for nearly 4/5 of your most advanced military hardware. That's not just a vulnerability, that's a five-alarm fire for national security. And this wasn't some far-off problem for another generation to solve. No, the threat was right here, right now. Experts were warning that if China just decided to turn off the spigot, the U.S. defense industrial base could grind to a halt, not in years, not in months, but in a matter of days or weeks. So, you've got this ticking clock, the entire defense industry is on the line. What do? Well, the US didn't just react, it orchestrated an incredible countermove. And the wild part is, it all went down in just 72 hours. A 72-hour window that completely rewrote the rules of the game. It was like a lightning-fast diplomatic blitz. On October 24th, boom, Malaysia signs on, guaranteeing its supply lines to the US. That's a direct shot at China's leverage. The very next day, boom, Thailand agrees to build new processing plants, creating an alternative supply chain. All of a sudden, China's monopoly doesn't look so solid anymore. By the 26th, seeing this new alliance forming, Beijing really had no other choice but to come to the table. And what came out of it was this framework agreement, which, honestly, is a masterclass in strategic maneuvering. So what did each side give? China blinked. They agreed to hit pause on their threatened export controls for a year. That averts the immediate crisis. They also started buying U.S. soybeans again, a move that helped their domestic needs and gave the U.S. a political win. In return, what did the U.S. do? It held back its biggest stick, the threat of those absolutely crippling 100% tariffs. But here's the key. No fundamental issues were actually resolved. This was a strategic timeout designed to buy one precious thing: time. But this deal wasn't just about hitting pause on a trade war. It was really the starting pistol for a massive, fundamental reorganization of global supply chains, a shift that, frankly, was already well underway. And you can see that shift right here in the numbers. Look at this chart. In just 6 years, nearly $200 billion in trade between the US and China just evaporated. This isn't a small dip. It's a massive structural change. And that money had to flow somewhere else. And this new agreement was basically a map telling it exactly where to go. And here's where it went. A massive $180 billion in trade was redirected, and a lot of that flooded into allied nations in Southeast Asia. You see, that creates a really powerful economic reason for them to get on board with the U.S. plan for supply chain security. This all feeds into a very clear three-step strategy the U.S. calls friendshoring, basically rebuilding your supply chains, but with your friends. Step 1, secure. Stop the bleeding, use the truce to prevent any short-term shocks. Step 2, accelerate. Use that new stability to pour investment into allies like Australia and Malaysia to build a new parallel supply chain that doesn't run through China. And step 3, erode. This is the long game. Systematically, piece by piece, chip away at China's 90% monopoly until it's no longer a strategic weapon. Which brings us to where things stand now. Because this framework wasn't the end of the race, not by a long shot. In fact, it just kicked off a new and maybe even more intense phase of the competition. So let's be absolutely crystal clear about this. This agreement is a truce. It is not a peace treaty. Its number one goal was to buy the United States invaluable time. Time to build, time to invest, and time to finally break free from this dependency for good. And this is what that bought time actually looks like on the ground. This isn't just talk. It's a real concrete industrial strategy. You can see it on the timeline here, new facilities popping up year after year, first in Texas, then new joint projects with Australia, then full-scale separation hubs in Oklahoma and Texas. And there's a hard deadline. The National Defense Authorization Act mandates complete independence from China's rare earth supply chain by 2035. The clock is ticking. And this quote from the source material just nails the entire strategy. This was never about de-escalation. It was about changing the pace of the race, forcing a deceleration for China by complicating its strategy while creating the space for an acceleration for America to build a resilient, independent supply chain. So where does all this leave us? Well, this incredible 72-hour pivot didn't end the great tech competition. It just started a brand new lap on a completely different racetrack. The U.S. basically turned a moment of extreme weakness into a decade-long head start to rebuild. And that leaves us all with one big question. In this relentless race for the future, was the finish line just moved,